You know, there is a service in the US where you can go into a private jet just to take pictures. People don't give themselves enough time to find out who they really are before they start making music. And, you know, I understand that we're all works in progress and we're all going through things in life that are going to define, you know, what we write about and what we create. But I think there has to be a level of like understanding who you are as an individual before you start taking on, you know, this music thing. I feel like if you don't know who you are, you're going to start replicating somebody else. And look, I'll be honest, I'm sure I did that in my early career as well. I was a big fan of Jay-Z. I tried to rap like him. I tried to look like him, tried to sound like him. I did all of that type of stuff. And I feel like that's because I was still trying to discover who I am. So I could say, well, that's an influence. I feel like I've kind of come into my own probably like in my 30s, just because I've been more comfortable with who I am and with the music that I'm creating, that I've been able to do so. But that requires a lot of self-reflection. It requires a lot of honesty, and it requires a lot of time. The crowd is fantastic these days because the crowd is so supportive and they're so like, you know, they're wanting to get behind the artist and want everyone to feel comfortable and everything. But you can just feel everyone's just walking around on eggshells because no one wants to offend anybody. No one wants to really speak their mind because they're just scared that people aren't going to accept them or they're going to look like the bigot in the room. And that's a really weird place to be in. It's not really showing the individual at the end of the day. It's just showing what they want to be presented as. And look, you're right, man. Not everyone is going to agree with everything that you believe, and that's totally fine. I know people probably wouldn't believe with my faith background. So what? It's fine. We can still hang out. We can still kick it. We can still make music as well. But it's when the forcing of like how you're meant to think or how you're meant to believe, that's what I got a problem with. Instagram is just your highlight reel. It's not your blooper reel. It's just your highlights, right? No one's posting up like, oh man, yeah, I got punched in the face today, man. Oh, hey man, I couldn't pay my bills this week. Like, we're not posting that type of stuff. We posting all this stuff. Oh yeah, man, we in VIP sections here, man. Oh man, look, we in business class. That's all we're posting. Stupid, frivolous stuff, which is not a reflection of what our reality really is. I ain't doing that, man. If I have to perform on top of a speaker like I did last night in that club, right, I'll do that and show the whole world that I've just done that, as opposed to being like, oh man, I only post the big gigs. I only post the ones where we're in front of 1,000 people. At one point, that blue tick meant that you've actually done something with your, you know, with your creativity. That you're a public figure, you're a musician, you're an artist, whatever it is, the blue tick actually meant something before you could buy it. Because that tick really, like from how Facebook and Instagram define it, and even to how Twitter defines it, is that you have to have articles written about you. You have to have press releases written about you. You have to have something that actually shows that external like publications are interested in you. You can't go and buy that. And so the fact that now you can totally devalues for me, which is why I said last night, I don't do it for blue ticks. I do it because I knew I've been blessed with a true gift. That's reality. It cannot be this whole thing of like, okay, well, again, my success is defined by how many followers I have or how many views I have on my videos or if I've got a blue tick or not. It's not. These have just become like euphoric things that we look for as individuals to just like to try and satisfy our craving for attention or for like, okay, well, if someone likes my stuff, that means they really like it. It's like, man, it just showed up on the timeline. Bro, there's a difference between like aspirations and responsibility, right? Because I think you have to have both, otherwise you're going to struggle. Because if you only chase after your aspirations, you're going to neglect your responsibilities. And the responsibilities are the things that are going to keep you afloat, right? The idea of like, yo man, I'm going to drop school, I'm going to quit everything and just chase music, right? Who's going to pay the bills, right? Because if you're not making money from the music, then, you know, I understand the sacrifice part, and that's all we hear is these rags to riches tales, but you have to be wise about your decisions at the same time. And then having said that, on the flip side to it, if you're only about your responsibilities and you're not about your passion, you're going to end up working a job that you don't want to work. You're going to end up having a career that you don't want to, you know, have. And you're going to wake up at 35 and be like, crap, man, I don't like anything about my life. there's God's law and there's the laws of the land, right? So what the Bible says is, it says to obey the laws of the land as if you're obeying God, right? So, for example, like, don't speed, right, because it's against the law, right? So if you obey that, it's like as if you're doing it unto God, right? Having said that, there are going to be laws that conflict with the laws of God, right? It's not that you go and break the laws, right? Because the law is not saying that everyone has to be married to someone of their same sex, right? It's just saying that you're allowing it. I didn't have to agree with the law for it to exist, because I'm not breaking the law if I don't do that either. It's different, right? Because that's a choice. If someone wants to do that, by all means, go ahead and do it. Doesn't affect me whatsoever, right? That's their choice, that's their decision, got nothing to do with me, right? But when it does start to, impact me, is when it becomes like a thing of like, society is now asking, everyone to have the same values. That's where I start, pushing back, because I feel like we should be in a world where everyone can coexist. I shouldn't have to try and push like my agenda on you. You shouldn't have to push your agenda on me. I respect anyone, for who they are, what they are, whatever they want to do. But it's when they want to say, well, I need to make sure that I tell your kids that they can be like me. Like, no, well, that's my kid. That's my kid. I'll determine that. That's what the parent is there for, right? Some parents may not want their kids listening to my music. I'm not going to be like, well, listen, let me get them in their school and hey, have you heard this MARKIA? Like, that's not right. If the parent doesn't want that to happen, that's cool. That's fine. That's what a parent is there for them to raise their kids how they see fit. I was creating music strictly for church people, right? We were doing gigs every weekend at a different church, at a different conference, at a different like youth event, and we were doing all this stuff that we thought was like, oh, this is big scale, right? This is huge. It's big for the small demographic that it is. At the time, when I'm creating this music, it's getting all of the response from church people, but it's not getting any response from anyone outside of that because they don't even know it exists. There was one situation in particular where I was in Sri Lanka, and I met with this dude named IRAJ, who's actually, I didn't know how big of an artist he actually was until I got there. Well, it wasn't until I got to his house, and the cab driver was like, oh, this is IRAJ's house. I'm like, oh, you know this guy? It's like, yeah, man, this is a big artist. I'm like, okay. And then I go into his house, and this dude has his name at the bottom of his pool. I was like, oh, this must be a big dude. I walked in, I showed him my music, and it was all the Christian stuff. And he was like, hey, man, this is cool, but it's not going to work in Sri Lanka because it's in English. I'm like, oh, I thought you were going to say because of Jesus, right? But no, it's because it's in English. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I was about to get up and walk off. And he was like, hey, look, man, we've got this song for the Cricket World Cup. Do you want to jump on it? I was like, oh, yeah, for sure. And this was like probably one of the first times that I actually done like a non-Christian like track in all that time, probably since the time I was 21. And so that's where it started the cracks in the church environment, because all of a sudden now that MARKIA that was set only for the church folks now became like, I'm compromising now because I'm starting to work with the world. But then IRAJ was like, nah, man, this dude's talented. We're going to keep working with him. And so we did another song called Your Love, which went on BBC Radio and got nominated for an award in the Hollywood Music Awards. It did crazy stuff that even that song got the ears of DJ Quick and Dr. Dre, and they allowed a feature from an artist named Truth Hurts, who had the song So Addictive. She worked with IRAJ, off the strength of that, and they also worked with Corrupt as well. So it started opening all these doors, and I'm like, oh, I can see God in this, right? Because I'm not compromising my message or who I am as an individual, but I'm seeing God use the gift outside of that. But then all of a sudden these church folks were like, oh, Mark, you're doing secular music now, right? And the issue is, it got to a point where I wasn't doing as much church stuff, because people thought I was like, chasing after the world. And it's just the mentality that people have, that they just think that you cannot, be an artist like in the world. It's like, well, bro, how do you work in a bank and being a Christian? How do you work as a mechanic being a Christian? How do you work as a construction worker being a Christian? Like, how is the music industry any different, right? You don't have to work with people that have the same belief as you, right? That's dumb, right? Otherwise, if that's the case, no one would ever have a job. It got to that level where I made a decision for myself, and I said, well, cool, guys, if you don't want to follow me, and if you don't want to book me, that's on you. I'm gonna keep going in this direction. The way I look at it, man, is that if I didn't go in that direction, I don't meet Kill Collective. I don't have those conversations with the guys in the studio. I don't get the opportunity to get up in front of people and tell them about my faith in a place where they would never hear it. I don't get a chance to get videos played on MTV. I don't get a chance to open for the Outlaws. I don't get a chance to work with these artists. Like, the trajectory of my whole life changes if I don't have the courage to do what God had told me to do at that time. You know, I can share this message in a way that hip hop heads are going to get it and they're going to respect it at the same time. It's not going to sound cheesy. It's not going to sound cliched. It's going to sound authentic. I feel like when I was younger, I tried to rush things and I tried to push things, and I did the whole thing. This is why I keep saying, like, this is why I say I know what it's like to be in that hustle mode. I know what it's like to try, you know, like, let's push, let's grind, let's do all this and let's get the work in. I know what it's like to have those sleepless nights where you're trying to make something work for yourself. And I know what it's like to wake up one day and be like, damn, it didn't work out. I've done all of this stuff which never actually worked the way I thought it would. It only, for me, like, became a reality when I actually had to take a step back and be like, well, I've done everything I possibly can, and there's nothing more that I can do in my own strength, so I might as well just wait on God to do what he needs to do, if that's the case. Like, bro, I spent about 3 years trying to convince church people of who I wasn't, and doing like everything I possibly could to try and open doors for myself. Tried to even like apologize for stuff which I never did, right? Or because of misconception, and tried to convince people all this and that, and none of it ever worked. Where I just thought, well, look, I can't do anything else except, you know, what I've done, and I can't make anyone change their mind about who I am. So I just have to just keep moving the way that I do, which is why I get to a place now where I'd be like, yeah, man, everything in God's timing. I don't have to worry about, you know, when it's going to occur or how it's going to happen. I just need to just trust that it's going to work. And look, man, it has so far. I feel like the more and more we try and chase after the world will never stop to chase after us.